big data went down to Georgia. They were looking for a vote to steal.
Well, now the devil went down to Georgia and he's looking for a soul to steal. He was in the bind because he was way behind. He was willing to make a deal. When he came across this young man sawing on the fiddle and playing it hot, and the devil jumped up on the hickory stump and said, "Boy, let me tell you what, you right." They did not even know it, but I'm a fiddle player too. And if you care to take a dare, I'm going to make a bet with you. Now, you play pretty good fiddle, boy, but let's give the devil his due. I bet this fiddle of gold against your soul is think I'm better than you. Boy, said, my name's Johnny, and it might be a sin, but I'm going to take that bet. You're going with Greg, 'cause I'm the best as ever been. Johnny, you rouse it up, you low, and play your fiddle hard. The devil.
I'm Millie Weaver, and you're watching the Millennial Millie Show. Well, today we're going to be talking about the role that big data plays in our elections. We are now in the millennial era. Essentially, we're in the era of technology and advancements, especially in the collection of data and the aggregation of data, including the use of AI algorithms in order to be able to completely utilize these predictive programs where they could essentially predict election outcomes and predict the future. So let's get right into it. Remember how Hillary Clinton, back all throughout the transition of power between Obama and President Trump, we saw how Hillary Clinton was completely just claiming that the election was stolen from her. And what was she using? What was she saying was the justification for why she was claiming it was stolen? Well, she was saying that there was Russian election interference. Remember? Remember these articles? Remember the news that was out there everywhere saying, look at this, there's Russian election interference. These Russian hackers, Russian military intelligence officials, they interfered in the 2016 election. And what was the claim? What did they claim they did? Okay. They claimed that these guys hacked into computer systems, aka Hillary Clinton's servers, right? Secretary of State, and released information that then could be used to influence the 2016 US presidential election. So that was what they were making all this stink about, okay? A handful of people from Russia, which had nothing to do with President Trump, that they claimed greatly influenced the election because, well, the American people got to see the truth, right? But don't take my word for it. Listen to Hillary Clinton herself.
President Trump, she's now claiming the election was stolen from her. Watch this.
I think it's also critical to understand that, as I've been telling candidates who have come to see me, you can run the best campaign, you can even become the nominee, and you can have the election stolen from you.
So, Brian, I think this is a...
So there she is, okay, claiming that the election was stolen from her. And yet now today, after literally hearing for the entire 4 years President Trump was in office that the election was stolen from Hillary, Russian interference, Russian collusion, all of these conspiracy theories, now we're seeing just the epitome of schizophrenia and delusions on the part of the left-wing media outlets. I mean, just if you were to try to juxtapose the articles from just a couple years ago to now, it's just these people are complete hypocrites. Either that or they're just crazy and they don't see the contradictions. So here's CNN doing an article, a guide to the election deniers in midterm races. Like, oh, let's demonize anyone that questions the outcome of an election or that there could be interference in elections, right? So anyone now that wants to claim there was any type of interference or claim that there was something wrong with the elections, they are classified as an election denier, a derogatory term. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're a tinfoil hat wearer. When they themselves, the hypocrites sitting high on their hill, literally for years on end, beat their sound and their cry to the same exact drum, okay? Even now, it's not like they just were doing it then and stopped, right? Hillary Clinton still to this day just recently actually came out and made a claim that she believes that right-wing extremists are already planning to steal the election in 2024 and in the midterms. Check it out.
Indivisibles. I'm here to highlight something that is keeping me up at night. And I know this group really understands what I'm about to say. I know we're all focused on the 2022 midterm elections, and they are incredibly important. But we also have to look ahead, because you know what? Our opponents certainly are. Right-wing extremists already have a plan to literally steal the next presidential election. And they're not making a secret of it. The right-wing controlled Supreme Court may be poised to...
So they're allowed to say that someone is going to steal an election, or someone stole an election, or that someone's trying to interfere or engage unlawfully in their conduct pertaining to either, counting votes, interfering, influencing, etc., right? They seem to be allowed to say anything they want pertaining to elections. But I'll probably get this video removed. Who knows how long this will be up, and I might get in trouble for this video. But you know what? I'm just over it. And if I do get banned, guys, you all know where to find me. You can find me on QUX, because I'm not trying to give all my data away to big tech for free. And that's what we're going to be talking about next, okay? We're going to be talking about big data, because big data plays a really important key role in elections, okay? That's why I played that Charlie Daniels music, the song, at the beginning of the video, at the beginning of this show. Because the devil is like big data, essentially, and they're looking for an election to steal. They're looking for a vote to steal. And we think we can just get into a battle with them on their devices, right? And it's not going to come out very well in the end for us if we keep trying to play the fiddle with the devil. And when the reality is, okay, we should be calling on a higher power, first of all. And we should be not playing those games, not allowing them to have the upper hand by playing their game, okay? So I want you to watch this clip on big data, just so you guys can kind of get somewhat of an idea into just how bad the problem is. And then I'm going to be going through in depth this new article that came out that really illustrates the role that big data played in the 2020 election, and how our elections are literally just completely made vulnerable by big data and by the social media and tech companies that we all are willfully engaging in today. So let's go to this clip.
Just by starting to watch this video, you've added new data to your profile in somebody's database. That profile will be used to target you for adverts or political campaigns, or to predict what people like you will do in the future. Whether you get a job interview or go to jail could depend on the data other people have collected about you. So you might want to spend 5 minutes learning a bit more about how it works and what kind of world it's building around us. If you stop watching now, by the way, that will also produce data, probably pushing your profile's impulsivity score up by 0.7 points, meaning that in 5 years' time, some recruiting algorithm will reject you for that job as an astronaut. So stick around while I tell you about big data. Data is nothing new, it's just information in a transferable form. About 30,000 years ago, in a cave in Central Europe, somebody carved 57 notches into a wolf's shin bone in groups of 5, like you'd tally something today. That's data. We don't know what they were counting or why, but we know there were 57 of whatever it was. That's the oldest example I know of digital data. Digital because you could...
Right, so she's just kind of going into the broad scope of what data can be seen as, and it's basically just a collection of any type of information and the ability to count it, the ability to account for it and log it and whatnot. All right, so let's get past some of that.
It's getting bigger so fast that if I gave you a figure, it would be out of date before the end of this video. 10 years ago, Google was processing 20,000 terabytes of data every day. Last year, American retailer Walmart collected 2,500 terabytes of data on its customers every hour. But though size does matter, it's not the whole story. There are 4 other things that make big data special, and I've made them into a backronym for you using DATA for data. D is for dimensions, if you want the technical word, or diverse or different if you prefer. By combining data of different types from diverse sources, you can get a multi-dimensional picture. For example, I asked neuroscientist Professor Paul Matthews if he was excited about using all the data from brain scans. But he said, that's just large data. Big data is when I put those brain scans together with the patient's medical records, the postcodes where they've lived, and the weather records for those postcodes. And then I ask a completely new question. For example, what's the relationship between the hours of sunshine they got and the way that their multiple sclerosis has progressed? A is for automatic. The way data is collected by default every time we do anything on our computers or with our bank cards or just move around carrying our smartphones. In fact, pretty much anything we do these days generates data which somebody can use.
So notice she says the way we move around, our routes, our location, where we're traveling, what we're doing, all of that is being heavily watched and stored and tracked, okay? To the point where even that's what Dinesh D'Souza and the True the Vote people did, was they essentially purchased the cell phone ping geolocation tracking data, and these companies just sell it, okay? They sell it for a lot of money, but other wealthy companies can buy it. And what they can do is you can plug it in and you can figure out things. You can do all kinds of things with it, right? And so they were able to kind of backtrack and figure out who all these mules were essentially that were going to the ballot boxes. And so that's what the movie 2000 Mules was about. But see, what some of these data companies have access to is they actually have live time analytics, okay, because they're the ones calculating and counting and collecting the data. So they actually have live analytics of where you are at the exact moment, pertaining to what level of a floor of a building you're in, to the ambient temperature of the room, your audio that they're picking up from your ambient discussions in the room. I mean, it's very detailed, okay? There are devices that literally can pick up your heart rate from holding it, okay? So they collect a lot of that information. So what do they do with it? That's the question.
We don't even notice it being collected most of the time. And T is for time. Because the data is being collected pretty much in real time, those patterns can be projected forward to help make predictions about the future. Things like when.
Right, so she gives these other broad examples, but things like the possible outcome of an election within a certain degree of accuracy, yeah, that's exactly what they can use that for.
The trains will be busiest, or how much electricity we'll need, or how fast malaria will spread. And the last A is for AI, artificial intelligence, which is not really intelligence like a human is intelligent, but an AI computer program that can find patterns in the data, often using techniques like machine learning, where you don't give it every step of the instructions, you just tell it to sort A from B, cat pictures from dog pictures maybe, or...
So you get the point, all right? Big data is really big. And right now, the only thing that gives it all this power is the fact that we, the people, keep feeding it. We are on their devices, that they just log all of our data. They capture it all. They sell it all to third parties. These third-party companies are logging it all. And let's talk about what they're doing with it. Now, I really want to spend a good amount of time going over this article because I really believe that it's a mandatory read for everyone. I mean, you really got to really understand the information being exposed in this article. Now, this is an article by a writer named Michael Nevradakis, which I probably butchered his name, so I apologize in advance. So millions of Americans were assigned COVID-19 violation scores based on cell phone data collected during the lockdowns. Well, wait a second, Millie. What does this have to do with elections? I thought you said we're going to be talking about data pertaining to elections. Well, isn't that interesting, right? Because they cared a lot about our data because of COVID-19. And in fact, they used COVID-19 as a justification to track and store even more of it and collect even more of it, right? So what did they do with all that data? You think they just only used it for COVID-19? A voter analytics firm harvested data from millions of American cell phones during the 2020 COVID-19 lockdowns and used the data to assign phone users a COVID-19 decree violation score and a COVID-19 concern score, according to a white paper released by PredictWise. And this was for, harvested data, essentially. So a voter analytics firm. So this was a voter analytics firm that was harvesting this data. They harvested this data, and they derived from nearly 2 billion GPS pings stemming from ground truth, real-time, ultra-granular location patterns. So that's what we were talking about with the whole locations, how they can literally track your every pattern. So what they were doing essentially was they were looking and seeing who was staying home during the pandemic and not traveling around as much, who was heeding the warnings of the mainstream media, who was not, right? This is exactly what we were exposing in Shadowgate. Yeah, you remember Shadowgate, the documentary where I was literally arrested the day I was trying to release it? Yeah, that documentary. This is exactly what we were talking about in Shadowgate, okay? So they were essentially using that data. It says the firm understood that there were potential pockets of voters to target with COVID-19 messaging and turned high-dimensional data covering over 100 million Americans into measures of adherence to COVID-19 restrictions during deep lockdown, okay? The data was collected with political purposes in mind, PredictWise said. I'm going to make this bigger so you guys can see. This is key. It doesn't take a data scientist to know that COVID-19 was going to play a major role in the 2020 election. So they knew that COVID-19 was going to play a big role in the election. They knew that they could utilize COVID-19 messaging and propaganda in order to try to influence election outcomes. Gee, what does that sound like? Does that sound like election interference to you? If they're literally using computer programs to target individuals on social media and push messaging to them to get them to change the way they would vote. And they're collecting and spying on everyone, figuring out how to psychologically tap their psyches in order to manipulate their minds to get them to vote a certain way. How is that not interference? This once-in-a-lifetime pandemic took control of the political debate over our airways and ultimately our lives. Republican voters were specifically targeted. So they targeted Republican voters based on data that was collected. PredictWise targeted Republicans who scored high on our measure of COVID-19 decree violation. Folks who were on the go more often than their neighbors. So they were looking at who's not fearful of the mainstream media fear-mongering over COVID-19. Who is not staying inside? Who is essentially resisting authority? Who is disobeying Big Brother? And they were also looking at Republicans who scored low on our measure of COVID-19 decree violation. A decree. And isn't a decree something like a king does? I mean, that's just ridiculous. They had a decree violation. Okay, so the king gives a decree, and we're all supposed to just listen to that? So the people they also paid attention to were folks who mostly or always stayed at home in the swing states, specifically like Ohio, okay? So that was probably not me because I was out and about, okay? But they were looking at Republicans who were adhering and who actually were concerned about COVID-19. So they also developed concern scores. PredictWise found that Republican non-movers or compliers concern around COVID-19 and persuadability was almost as high as Democrats overall. And Republican non-movers over the age of 65 were more concerned about COVID-19 than Democrats. oh, isn't that some interesting data that they were able to derive? Isn't it, right? Like fear, like feeding on the fear of these elderly people that if you don't comply, you're going to die. You know, I mean, really kind of feeding fear and creating a state of trauma and fear so that they can essentially direct them as the authority and tell them what to do and what to vote like for their safety. While PredictWise did not specify the precise period during which it harvested the data, Reclaim the Net noted that state-level lockdowns began in March, which we all know, right? And then it continued on through Election Day. This is noteworthy because of the political purposes for which the data collected by PredictWise was utilized. According to the firm, this data was used in at least one U.S. Senate campaign. And so they talk a little bit about the Arizona campaign and how it was able to deploy this real-time location model to open up just over 40,000 persuasion targets that normally would have fallen off, allowing them to give the right message to the voter at the right time. Isn't that interesting? So the Arizona Democratic Party is just one of the entities listed on the 2020 PredictWise client list accompanying the white paper. Other entities were the National Democratic Party, as well as the state-level Democratic parties of Florida, North Dakota, Ohio, and South Carolina, and the Ohio Senate Democrats, and organizations such as Fair Fight Action, Future Majority, Target Smart, and Voter Participation Center were also on the list. As noted by PredictWise, last election cycle, congressional, Senate, and presidential committees used PredictWise through the DNC. Super PACs pushed same-day registration in key swing states of Wisconsin and Michigan and produced the only statewide red to blue flip in a Trump-won state in Ohio. In total, PredictWise claims it tracks the opinions, attitudes, and behaviors of more than 260 million Americans. Okay, so it's not just, basic, rudimentary data. They're paying attention to your opinions, your attitudes, your behaviors. Big Brother wants to know if you're going to comply with their edicts and their decrees. Isn't that interesting? And they want to see if they can try to influence your vote. And what happens if you're on that list where you don't like to comply? I wonder what they're going to do with all that data. So they utilize not just location and survey data, but they also use telemetry data in the form of passively sourced cell phone data, right? So your cell phone could just be sitting there, but it's actually collecting a lot. Your phone is just ambiently picking up the audio in your room, right? Unregistered voter data and information on media consumption. So they're also paying attention to whether you're registered and your media consumption. In turn, the firm developed a dashboard. Oh, wait, you mean like the dashboard that we were talking about in Shadowgate? The ShadowNet? But the commercialized version of the ShadowNet, where basically military technologies to engage in psychological warfare applications and operations in foreign countries was commercialized and sold, and now all these other companies out there are using it to try to influence the American people with elections or buying products or who knows what other psychological operations they're trying to wage on the American people. Yeah, that dashboard? Okay, so this dashboard that enables campaigns to build scalable, customized audiences based on real-world behaviors and attitudes that track sentiment on the economy, political issues, and value frames from all 250 million adult U.S. voters. Oh, isn't that so sweet? This information is compiled through real-time locations, application usage, and media consumption layered on top of surveys and available raw data, and is extrapolated to a proprietary device ID voter file rather than the offline file based on name and address. So this is pretty hardcore, guys, okay? And then they find about people who are unregistered by credit files, like, for example, through when you make purchases at Crate and Barrel. So in total, PredictWise uses this data to create scores on 13 preference clusters and 7 value frame or psychometric clusters, utilizing more than 30 million behavioral data points, data from 350,000 survey respondents, and machine learning models to predict the party of unregistered voters. They can predict, you're like, oh, I'm not going to register. Well, guess what? Based on what you post on social media, based on everything else, they can predict what you're likely to vote, regardless if you're registered or not, because we just give them all this data, okay? So this dashboard places at your fingertips the most up-to-date and continuous data in the business, okay? It provides a rank order cut to ensure that its targets are the most likely to respond to the correct messaging or are the most definite voters for your campaign to turn out. All right, I'm not going to have time to get through this whole thing, but the firm was founded in 2017 by Toby Tobias Contizer, I don't know how to say it, Contizer, formerly from Facebook Research, and David Rothschild, an economist with Microsoft Research. And it says another firm closely connected to the Democratic Party, Impact Research, was advising the party and the Biden administration as early as February 2020 on how to position itself as having defeated COVID-19. So they were working with the Biden administration, essentially, to tell Biden what to say, when to say it, where to say it, to be able to go along with the psychological programming they were targeting individuals with on social media in order to really look at how people were responding live time to Joe Biden. I mean, they could see Joe Biden said this and the people responded instantaneously in this way. Okay, so they could really give him a leg up when it came to the election. This is key, guys. This is why we have to get off of their devices, and I mean it. As long as we continue to be on all of their electronics, their phones, their computers, right? These are literally just walking data loggers. These are data loggers that we're carrying around on our person, okay? And it's really creepy because I notice sometimes when I put the Amazon app on, the second I take it down in the little corner there, sometimes it'll show an actual red, let's see if I can get it to go. It'll show a little red microphone like it's been listening to me. Oh, didn't do it that time. Let's see if I can get it to do it. Oh, didn't do it that time. Sometimes it did it. Damn it. It does it when my face is looking at it. Let's see. There, it did it now. Okay. But yeah, these things are literally picking up audio recording. They are tracking your whereabouts. All that is feeding back into the beast. It's feeding back into the big machine where they're using this data against us. They're building out the social credit score systems, guys. I'm not kidding you. This is a serious problem. This is going to affect the future of your job applications, right? Companies are starting to utilize some software and technology to scan, and they scan your whole social medias, everything, your entire fingerprint of the internet in order to say you should not hire that person or you should hire that person, right? That is how dangerous it's becoming because it's going to affect your future as to whether or not you get a loan from a bank, whether or not you're approved on a loan for a car. These are serious things that are going to affect you. So we have to figure something out. We have to stop. I don't care if you guys don't want to get on QUX. I know there's a bunch of people wanting to get on QX right now because it's one of the only tech companies out there right now that literally doesn't collect data, doesn't even have the data logging type of program that these other devices have. It has something entirely new that doesn't rely on data collection. But you need to get rid of these devices then, right? Because the bottom line is these devices here, they're essentially giving away all of your privacy. You're giving away all your privacy. So if you guys don't know about QX, check it out because there are some tech companies out there that value privacy and security and that they don't believe that your data should be being traded and sold and that all that information out there shouldn't be being protected because we can't be allowing our entire elections, I mean, everything around us to be dictated by big tech. And that is where it's going, guys. That's where it's going.
2022. Cancel culture is the new normal. Online freedom as we know it has ended. Digital stockades are here. All activity is monitored, stored, and predictively analyzed by a technological cartel. We're being converted into a digital resource, a digital currency to be farmed for metadata and loaded into a computerized combine, blockchained to a social engineering operating system. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Be part of a new technological revolution. Right now, 1,000 test pilots have launched themselves into a new digital frontier, a private network outside of big tech control. New technology with state-of-the-art digital engagement and never-done-before security and privacy features that are now operational. With Qwik's digital engagement, entertainment, communication, and commercial exchange will never be the same. We are QUX. Qwik's. Advanced pre-release sales are limited to 3,000. Order now by visiting Qwix.tv. Get yours now before they sell out. Be part of a brand new online experience that you control.
You can either be part of the future or you can be blockchained into their social credit scores, their carbon footprint tracking, their future where they're going to limit the purchases you make with your credit cards when you're out shopping. Sorry, you're denied. You've went over your carbon footprint tracking limit. You've bought too many things emitting carbon emissions, right? Like you went over your carbon footprint. Sorry, you're denied. We're going to have to walk or ride a horse like the Amish, right? That's where it's going. That's where they're trying to take it. It's not just me seeing it. Look up the ESG system that they're trying to essentially force on all the banking institutions, the credit institutions, on companies in general, which is the environmental social governance system, where they'll be tracking all of this, okay? They'll be looking at your social credit scores for employment, okay? It's getting bad. And the way they're able to do it is, we weren't hip to what they were trying to do for so long that they've just amassed all of this data, the surveillance state. They've been building it all up around us, and we've been participating in it. We have been participating in it unknowing of what they were creating around us. They were creating the fence around us. While we're on here using social media, while we're on here using these new technologies and these exciting things, they're like, ha ha ha, we caught you. You're in our trap, right? I mean, did you ever wonder how are all these other social media companies even making a profit? We're just posting on there and we're putting all these pictures and putting all these words up and messaging, private message, we think's private, messaging with each other, right? How are they making the money? I mean, for the longest time, you didn't even see an advertisement on many of these platforms. They're making their money off of you. They're harvesting you. They're harvesting your data so they can sell it to companies that want to try to influence our elections, target us with psychological warfare weapons, target us with decrees and authoritarian pushes and see who complies and who doesn't, to then put people in categories and categorize us as to who's an obedient citizen and who is somebody who's likely to engage in political dissent. We can't continue to feed the monster. Enough is enough. I'm Millie.